All right, welcome everyone to another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at something pretty interesting. It's called Enset ventricosum, also known as the false banana.
Pulse banana, that's
Oops.
interesting.
Yeah, so it's actually a pretty fascinating plant. It's found in the Ethiopian highlands and it's really important over there. We're talking like 20 million people, mostly farmers, rely on this thing as a major food source.
Now, 20 million. That's a lot of people depending on one plant.
It is. And you know, when we think of bananas, we think of the fruit, right? But with this one, it's all about the stem and the corm, the underground part. It's starchy, packed with nutrients.
So not the banana we'd usually picture then. Huh. That's pretty remarkable that so many people rely on a single crop like that. Speaks to how well it must be adapted to that specific environment.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not like it just grows by itself. They've got whole farming systems built around it. You know, they grow it with other crops too, like maize and wheat, sometimes even livestock, depending on where they are in the highlands.
A whole system built around it. Makes sense if it's feeding that many people.
And it's actually known as the tree against hunger because historically, when other crops have failed, this one's pulled through.
The tree against hunger. Huh. That's a pretty powerful name. It really speaks to its reliability in a tough environment. I mean, it's a real testament to the role these indigenous crops can play in food security, especially in places where, the climate can be unpredictable.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the food. I mean, culturally, it's super important to a lot of communities there, like the Sidama, Garage, and Oromo people. They have like generations of knowledge about how to grow it and use it.
It's more than just food then. It's woven into their culture and history.
For sure. For sure. And the thing is, it's crazy productive. Like per unit area, it yields way more food than most cereals. Imagine this. A small plot of land can feed a whole family.
That's amazing. So efficient. I mean, we see high population densities in some areas where it's grown, like over 1,000 people per square kilometer. That's really impressive. It really highlights how efficient they've become at turning land into food in that particular ecological niche. Not something you see every day, especially not with reliance on a single crop.
Right. Okay, so let's get into how they actually grow this false banana. So traditionally, they've used cuttings or what they call suckers to propagate it. This ensures like genetic uniformity across the plants.
I see. So they're basically cloning the plants then.
Yeah, pretty much. And get this, to get those suckers, they actually damage the mother plant's apical shoot. It's basically the growing tip.
They damage it on purpose.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, but it works. It
Hmm.
triggers the plant to produce more suckers. It's a really clever technique, honestly. I've been using it for ages. They also divide the corm, the underground part, in nursery beds, and that gives them a ton of seedlings.
Huh. Damaging the plant to make it grow more. That's pretty ingenious.
Yeah.
It's a really effective form of vegetative propagation.
Yeah.
And yeah, dividing the core makes sense too. They can get a lot of seedlings that way.
Exactly. And then these seedlings, they get transplanted a bunch of times over a few years. You know, they time the planting with the dry season because the soil there is super clay heavy.
So they're really working with the land, carefully timing things. It's a long-term commitment to growing this crop.
Yeah, and the decision of when to harvest, that's usually made by the head of the household. They generally harvest before the plant flowers, which can take anywhere from 5 to 7 years, sometimes even longer.
Wow, that's a long time to wait.
It is a long time. And, you know, there's a gendered aspect to all this too. Traditionally, women are the ones doing a lot of the processing work.
Ah, so the whole system's tied into social structures as well. That's interesting. The multiple transplanting stages over such a long growth cycle are really fascinating. It really points to a long-term resource management strategy, really thinking ahead.
Now, on the modern side of things, there's a lot of work being done with tissue culture. The idea is to create disease-free seedlings, especially because they have a big problem with bacterial wilt. It's a nasty disease that can really hurt the plants.
Yeah, disease is a huge issue for any agricultural system. Focusing on disease-free seedlings, that's a smart move, especially with tissue culture. You can produce a lot of healthy plants quickly that way.
Right. And there are organizations like IATIA, you know, the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, and they're teaming up with Ethiopian universities to tackle this. They're even experimenting with some cool new techniques like vertical corm cutting. They can basically propagate the plants even faster in controlled environments.
That's really interesting, using these modern techniques to boost the production. Makes a lot of sense.
And US side has been helping introduce machinery to make the processing easier. Plus, there's a big push to breed new varieties of Enset that can handle climate change better, are resistant to diseases, and can deal with drought. The national research centers over there are constantly releasing improved varieties.
So they're trying to future-proof it, make it more resilient. That's a great sign. It's really essential, especially with all the challenges that climate change is bringing. Developing these resilient varieties is going to be key for the future of food security in the region.
Totally. So, how do they actually eat this Enset? Well, the main thing they make is called kocho. It's a fermented starch that comes from the pseudostem and the corm. They bury it in pits underground for weeks, sometimes months, and it turns into this amazing staple food. They use it for flatbread, porridge, all sorts of things. And the best part, it lasts forever.
Fermenting it, that's interesting. It's a great way to preserve food. Plus, it usually adds nutritional value and makes things easier to digest. And yeah, the long shelf life, that's crucial, especially for ensuring food security year-round.
Then there's bula. It's basically a really refined starch that they get while they're making kocho. Super high quality, easy on the stomach. They make porridge and dumplings with it. And then you have a micho, which is just the cooked corm, kind of like any other root vegetable.
So they use pretty much the whole plant then.
Yeah.
Talk about efficiency.
Yeah, almost every part of it is used for something. It's really amazing. And it's not just food. They also use the fibers to build stuff. Like they use it for roof thatching, they make ropes and mats, even packaging, and the leaves and other parts of the plant. That's animal fodder, especially important when things get dry.
Wow. So it's a multi-purpose crop, not just a food source. Talk about a valuable resource. I mean, using the whole plant like that is a sign of a really sustainable system, and having that fodder available year-round, that's critical for livestock.
Oh, and they also use it in traditional medicine. And when it's all dried up, they burn it as fuel.
Really, that's amazing. It's like this plant is woven into every aspect of their lives, so versatile.
Now, from an environmental standpoint, it's pretty good.
Mm.
Compared to annual crops, it doesn't need as much land disturbance, it helps keep the soil structured, there's less erosion, and it adds organic matter back into the soil. And those roots, they're amazing at holding the soil together, especially in the hilly areas where it grows.
That's great to hear. So it's a good crop for the soil, helps keep things healthy.
Yeah, it's great for intercropping too, and they don't really need to use synthetic fertilizers or irrigation.
So environmentally friendly, too. It's a pretty sustainable way of farming compared to some more intensive methods.
And when you look at climate resilience, this plant is a rock star. It can handle drought, floods, even frost. And that's partly because of its root system. It's like a built-in water storage tank.
A natural water tank. Wow. That's impressive.
Oh, and farmers also have traditional techniques to make it even more drought resistant. Plus, by growing different types and ages of Enset, they ensure there's always something to harvest no matter what happens in a particular spot. And that long shelf life of kocho, that's a big deal too. It's like a backup food supply.
It's a built-in safety net against tough times. That's really smart. The names they have for it, too, like Self-Rescue and My Gold, really show how much they value it as a safeguard against hardship.
Of course, it's not all sunshine and roses. Bacterial wilt is a huge issue. It can cause serious losses. And then you've got pests like root mealybugs and mole rats.
So even this super plant has its weaknesses.
Yeah, it does. Traditionally, farmers have tried planting different types of Enset to combat this, but access to good disease control, it's not always easy. And breeding resistant varieties, well, that takes a long time.
It's a constant battle against the elements. Bacterial wilt, that's a big one to tackle. And yeah, breeding programs, those take time, especially with a plant that grows this slowly. It underscores the need for more research, better management strategies.
Absolutely. Right now, a lot of research is going into things like tissue culture, how to manage bacterial wilt, genetics, even gene editing.
Gene editing, wow, that's cutting edge.
It is, it is. And researchers are also trying to document all the traditional farming practices, understand the social and economic aspects of Enset cultivation. It's been designated as a national commodity since 1997, and they've already released several improved varieties.
That's great that it's getting recognition at a national level. And the research across different fields, that's really important. It's how they'll address the current challenges and unlock even more potential in this plant.
Looking ahead, there's still a lot to learn. Like, how effective are the different farming methods? What's the genetic diversity like? How can they make breeding programs even better? What's the best way to control pests and diseases? Can it adapt to new environments? And how will climate change impact it in the long run?
It's great that they're asking these questions.
Yeah.
That kind of research is crucial for making sure this crop can thrive in the future.
And, while the government has been supportive, there's definitely room for better policies. Like, they need to make sure farmers can get disease-free planting material, and the market prices need to be fair so that farmers are actually encouraged to grow it. Plus, they need to look at the gender roles and make sure everyone benefits.
It's not just about research then. It's about the whole system, making sure it's sustainable and equitable. There's that recognition, but they need more specific actions to really support the Enset farmers and the entire Enset system.
Yeah, totally. So, to wrap it all up, Enset is a really important crop. It's resilient, it's great for food security, and it has a lot of environmental benefits. But to make sure it has a bright future, we need to keep researching it, the government needs to be supportive, and everyone needs to work together, especially to tackle problems like bacterial wilt.
It's a team effort to support this incredible plant and the people who rely on it.
So, here's a final thought for everyone. In a world where food security and climate change are huge concerns, we really need to look at these often overlooked indigenous crops. What other amazing plants are out there, just waiting to be explored? Plants that could be the key to a more sustainable future. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Absolutely. It's been a fascinating look at a truly remarkable crop.
Yeah, until next time, everyone.